A lot to cover on UVA Sports Beat today. Chris Graham, Augusta Free Press. Let's start with football. We got men's basketball, a lot to get into there as well. We'll start with football, with the UVA football team at 5-5, going into this weekend's game, Saturday noon Eastern Time, ESPN2. Plenty of good tickets still available, I'm sure, with number 12 SMU coming into town. Virginia is one win away from a bowl game. It'd be the first bowl game since the 2019 Orange Bowl. Virginia was invited to the Fenway Bowl in 2021, but that was still during COVID, and COVID canceled that game. But yeah, it's been a while. Orange Bowl. I remember being at that Orange Bowl game, going down thinking, yeah, this will be something that we'll do regularly, these kind of trips. I'd been up to the Military Bowl in Annapolis in 2017. Um, the coldest day I think I've ever been outside in my life. Annapolis, that's not very far north, but man, it was cold. I think the high temperature that day was somewhere around two with 20-mile-an-hour winds, and then the game was not good. Virginia scored a touchdown on the opening kickoff and lost 49-7 to a Navy team that wasn't that good. I mean, they were fine, but they weren't that good. And then the Belk Bowl, I think it was called back in 2018 in Charlotte. That was better. Virginia won that one 28-0. Nice weather in Charlotte. And then 2019, man, you get down to Miami. It was December 30th at 8 o'clock at night, and it was hot at 8 o'clock at night on December 30th. That's what you play bowl games for. That's what you work hard to get into a bowl game for, is to go play somewhere where it's hot. I ran the Run with Jim 5K that morning on Miami Beach, and it was hot at 8 o'clock in the morning, of course, and the palm trees when you're running by. It was really pretty. Yeah, and we haven't been back to one since 5 years. Um, SMU, SMU. So Virginia's one win away from a bowl game. It wouldn't be Miami. It'd be north of Annapolis. If Maine has games, if Canada has a bowl game, we'd be in one of those. But a bowl game is a bowl game. SMU's one win away from the ACC Championship Game, and they're trying to play their way into the college football playoff, obviously. And SMU is the only undefeated team in ACC, plays 6-0 in the ACC. So really, just one more win, and they're in, as far as that goes, as far as Charlotte goes in December. So both teams have a lot to play for. Looked at the common opponents. You get this late in the season, you've got some common opponents, even in a 17-team league, which is just ridiculous. Both teams played Louisville. SMU won 34-27. Virginia lost 24-20. And remember that game, Virginia had a 2017 lead inside the 2-minute timeout in the fourth quarter. And Louisville scored a touchdown. Virginia couldn't get anything on the board on his last possession and lost that game. Close game, though. So both teams played both teams played Louisville close. Pitt, now SMU won that one. The final score was 48-25, and it was not that close. I think it was 34-3 early in the third quarter. Um, a flood of substitutions. Pitt put some points on the board at the end that didn't really matter. Now, Virginia won at Pitt 24-19. Boston College, SMU won 38-28. They tacked on a touchdown late in that game when the game was already decided to make it 38-28. So basically they won that game really close. Virginia won 24-14 in Charlottesville back in September. And that game was a game in the fourth quarter as well. So you look at the three, and I mean, they both beat Pitt, both played Louisville close, and both played Boston College close and beat Boston College, but in tight games. So common opponents: SMU 3-0, Virginia 2-1 with a narrow loss. SMU's a 9.5 point favorite, and ESPN Analytics gives the Mustangs a 78.2% chance of winning. I think it's closer than that. I think it's going to be closer than that, just based on what I just said there, right? So, SMU offense, you hear a lot about the quarterback, Kevin Jennings. And I think a lot of what our attention goes to is the Louisville game. He had 281 yards passing, 113 yards on the ground in that one. And if that's the only game you paid any attention to his stats, you're thinking Lamar Jackson, I mean, close to 300 in the air, over 100 on the ground. But that was his outlier game on the ground. Averages 34.5 sack adjusted yards on the ground. Good numbers. He averages 219 through the air per game, 65% completion rate, 15 TDs, 6 INTs, but he's not Lamar Jackson. He's a good quarterback, good college quarterback. Um, But more than a third of his rushing yards came in that Louisville game, and he had a 59-yard run that gave the bulk of his rushing yards in that game. So, all right. But what makes him dangerous and his running back, Brashard Smith, dangerous is just the idea on a read option that you have to watch for both guys. You account for Jennings on the edges, basically the fake handoff to the running back, and then he takes off if the defensive end cracks down. 25 of his 35 design runs were around the end, left and right end, and he averages 5.1 yards an attempt on those. Also averages 7.1 yards per attempt on scrambles. So you just got to account for him. Now this Rashard Smith kid, the running back, is a bruiser, 102.6 yards per game, 12 TDs on the ground, and a lot of his rushing is the hard stuff, right up the middle, through the A gap, 461 yards on 52 attempts, just under 9 yards an attempt, and 245 of the yards are after contact. So, yeah, he runs right up the gut, runs right in the heart of your defense, and he gets yards even if you hit him. Um, the focus of their ground attack is to the A gap and to the right side of the line. 353 yards for Smith on 67 attempts, averaging 5.3 yards an attempt. So a lot of tough sledding that this team does. It's not a lot of deception. It's smash mouth football, and they're good at it in the run game side of things. The Smith kid is also a weapon in the passing game. 27 catches on 29 targets. Most of that is screens. 21 of his 27 catches are behind the line of scrimmage, so basically just long handoffs. He averages 5.3 yards. Is it 5.3 yards? Let's see. I know I had that wrong. Like 5.5 yards per catch on those. So, I mean, it's just a long handoff, but still, it's more yards you got to account for too. If you're over zealous in your pass rush, they'll make you pay for it there. Drops can be an issue for the wideouts. Jordan Hudson has 23 catches, but four drops. Jake Bailey has three drops, 19 catches. Roderick Daniels, two drops with 21 catches. Watch out for Keyshawn Smith, best deep target. He has 415 yards receiving, averaging right at 15, 16 yards a catch. And he has five catches on balls traveling 20 plus yards through the air. On defense, they have good depth at defensive end. They have four guys who will rush the quarterback and get there. Jafari Harvey, 5 sacks, 30 QB pressures. Elijah Roberts, 4 sacks, 44 QB pressures. So that's 4.4 per game. Isaiah Smith, 4 sacks, 26 QB pressures. Cameron Robertson, 2 sacks, 23 QB pressures. The starting nose tackle gets some quarterback pressure as well. Jared Harrison Hunt, 3 sacks, 31 QB pressures. Um, Linebacker Kobe Wilson, you'll hear a lot as making tackles. He averages 8.1 per game. And the safeties are really good. Ahmad Moses, 3 INTs, three pass breakups, a 57.8 NFL passer rating against. That's a really good passer rating against for a safety, for a defensive back. Isaiah Wokobia, 3 INTs, two pass breakups, 70.5, also pretty good number there. The best cover corner is Deuce Harmon, 1 INT, five pass breakups, and a 75.9. Now, 75.9 is a little higher, but still good cover corner there. Details of this game, it's noon Saturday, early kickoff for the last home game of the season. It's on ESPN2. Sam Acho is the only person I recognize on the announce crew. He's the analyst on this crew. And the line is SMU by 9.5. I mentioned that. Over under is 58. So your projected final score is somewhere in the range of SMU 29, Virginia 20. I like to do that. That's what Vegas basically, when they give the line on the over under, it's kind of what they're saying there. So let's talk injury report. Who's in, who's out for UVA this weekend? James Jackson out, and this is a big loss. The middle linebacker will not be available. He was nursing a foot. He went 22 snaps, actually 18 snaps without penalties. So, according to Pro Football Focus, but Elliott said 22 plays in, couldn't deal with the pain with his foot anymore. On the season, Jackson's been in on 403 snaps, and he has a 54.8 PFF season grade. Um, let's see. Also out is safety Corey Thomas, another big loss. 538 snaps this year, 42 tackles, a 77.7 PFF grade. He had a head injury in the Notre Dame game. Uh, let's see. All good to go, guys. Blake Steen on the offensive line, 626 snaps this year, a 65.7 PFF grade. That's a pretty good number there. Nose tackle, Jameer Carter, 488 snaps, 21 tackles, 11 QB pressures, 1 sack, a 61.1 PFF. And Terrell Jones, defensive end, 254 snaps, 20 tackles, 7 pressures, 59.0 PFF. They're all good to go. Cam Robinson should be good to go. Tony Elliott said he's probable. Robinson's numbers are a little down this year. I mean, he's versatile. 422 snaps, 52 tackles, 12 QB pressures, 3 sacks, 1 INT. Does a little bit of everything. 61.1 PFF grade. He's been playing hurt a lot this year. I can't remember what game it was. Maybe the Maryland game, I think was the third game of the season. Tweaked his knee. Hate to use the word tweaked, but that's what he did. Just injured his knee a little bit. Um, and ever since, he's just not been 100%. So, and actually, what Elliott's saying too, so that was the knee in that game. He's been battling a shoulder injury all year as well. So he's not 100%, but he's been out there. He's a warrior. Trell Harris will not be available. He's been out since week 3. Boy, you'd love to have seen what this offense could have done if Harris was available more. Just 3 games this season, 13 catches, 18 targets, 201 yards. I mean, he's a deep threat. 69.9 PFF grade. Elliott said he should have been back in practice this week. He was expecting him back in practice. Elliott talked to the media on Tuesday. I'm talking with you here on Thursday. Harris was expected back in practice on Wednesday, but no go. No, just not, not physically ready. Hopefully we'll be ready for Virginia Tech because that's the last game of the season um, next week. So let's see. The big story with UVA football outside of all this is the Anthony Calandria situation. Calandria got benched last week. 3 INTs in the final 257 of the second quarter in the 35-14 loss to Notre Dame, and just didn't look good. I mean, 3 INTs are one thing. You can have INTs popped up in the air and things like that, and these weren't those kinds. Um, and you can tell that Tony Elliott's struggling with what to do. He's started Calandria, all 10 games this season. Calandria got 6 starts last year as a true freshman with the injuries to Tony Muskett, the opening week starter. And Calandria feels like, I mean, gosh, just from a feel standpoint and then from a number standpoint, feels like he's regressing. Now, Elliott did say on Tuesday that he was leaning towards starting Calandria if things were equal, but he's giving first team reps, splitting first team reps between Muskett and Calandria just to give them both a chance to, if he does decide to go Muskett, then Muskett's got the reps with the first team offense. I went through the presser. There were a lot of questions about Calandria. Obviously, I went through it several times, and just the more and more I read the comments, particularly, the sense I got was that Elliott's trying to talk himself into sticking with Calandria. The problem being I've harped a lot in the immediate aftermath of the Notre Dame game on Calandria's last 3 games, and in those last 3 games, he's been playing awful. 40 of 73 through the air, so like a 54% completion rate, 368 yards, 1 touchdown, 7 INTs. And he hasn't completed 60% or better of his passes since the week 4 game, the win at Coastal Carolina. You remember that was actually a game where they ran the ball for 375 yards. So, very, very limited usage in that one. And, it's just not been what you expected out of Calandria this season, especially the way he played the first 4 weeks. Um, you know, Elliott went all out of his way, it seemed almost to try to talk back the issues with Calandria in the game on Saturday, this past Saturday, Notre Dame game. The one was, I mean, they were all bad, just bad decisions. He tried one throw, running to the sideline, throwing back towards the middle of the field. Elliott tried to actually blame the running back Xavier Brown for that because your coach Elliott said to if you're the receiver in that situation to keep running towards the sideline. Don't drift back towards the middle to make it look like you're open because the quarterback will want to throw it to you. Okay, so don't do that, but also don't throw the ball back to him, even if he looks like he's open. There were a couple just bad forces too, as far as that goes. So, here's the slack I'll cut Calandria. His receivers weren't getting open, and it's not his fault that they're not getting open. And the offense was struggling. The defense did a great job, I thought. I mean, the opening kickoff was fumbled. Notre Dame had a short field, got a touchdown. Then there were 4 straight 3-and-outs put in by the defense. Virginia then got a fumble on a punt, recovered in plus territory. Kobe Pace fumbled as he was running inside the red zone on a drive that could have tied the game. And then, that's when the wheels fell off. Notre Dame got up 14-0. The way the Virginia offense had been sputtering to that point, I can understand why Calandria and other guys might say we need to go make a play. But and the game plan wasn't good. The play calling by Des Kitchings wasn't good. It seemed like it was almost to a point where we'll just see if we can, go 0-0 into overtime and kick a field goal and win the game. I mean, it was a very, very conservative game plan, and it wasn't executed very well. That's the other problem. Um, I look back, I had a sense to do this, and the sense turned out to be right. I looked back at Calandria's numbers because what I felt like is in these last three games, I mentioned the bad numbers, one TD, seven INTs, the low completion percentage, that this felt like the Calandria of last year. He had those two different runs as the starting quarterback. Musket got hurt in the Tennessee game, the opener last year, so Calandria had to start games two, three, and four. And then Calandria comes back, actually leads Virginia to a couple of wins, including at UNC. Got hurt again in the Georgia Tech game, and then Calandria finished that game out and then played games 10, 11, and 12. So it was a neat break to see. All right, how is this guy? How did he grow from one stretch to the next? He was a true freshman, remember last year, and in that first run, he played like a true freshman. There were high spots and there were low spots. Three INTs in the loss at Maryland, two INTs in the loss to NC State. He had five picks and 71 pass attempts in those two games alone. That's one every 14 attempts. You throw in the relief appearance in the loss to Georgia Tech, he pretty much played starters minutes in that game, starters snaps in that game. Three INTs and 142 attempts to finish the season out. That's one for every roughly 48 attempts. So I mean, he really improved ball security wise. The completion percentage numbers, the yards numbers. A very effective quarterback in those last three plus almost four games. He's regressed. It feels like the guy we've seen in the last 3 weeks, maybe the last 6 weeks, has been more of the first run freshman guy, not the guy who finished the season out with good numbers. And I mean, I understand he's the future. That's the hard part. Hard part is, Musket is a fifth year senior. He's not back next year, and Calandria is a sophomore. He's got 2 more years, but you got to win games now, and we'll see. I fully expect Calandria to be the starter, but Elliott said that it could be up to a game time decision. So we'll have to see. We'll maybe need to get there early on Saturday, and I'll sit in the press box and watch how they warm up. But you can't really tell a lot from that. But we'll see. We'll see. Um, let's switch some gears now. That's focusing on SMU and game week. Got a question actually from Scott German, fellow sports right here at AFP. He asked me just he sent me a text. How do we do on the transfer portal this year? How are our guys doing from the transfer portal? And I had to say, gosh, let's go look it up. So I did. Uh, and I think the point that we're making when we talk about this is, all right, so Scott started this after the Carolina game. He wrote about, I mean, he didn't count them right. I had to go recount for him. He was guessing there were 30 guys who were either grad students or seniors on this team, no eligibility after this season, and that'd be a lot of guys to replace. I went and counted as actually 43, so it's even worse this guy had put on there. And then now you'll figure that there will be a couple guys at least in there who will get medical red shirts, so it's not going to exactly be 43, but then you have to put on top of that guys who will transfer out in terms of just roster reconstruction for next year is what I'm getting at. Um, and I went back and looked at the last 2 years' numbers just to get a sense, how the transfer portal plays for Virginia. Elliott lost 15 guys from last year's roster, 14 guys from 2022. So you can guess somewhere 12 to 15 guys will go there. So if you're talking 43 seniors and grad seniors, between 12 and 15 maybe guys who will transfer out, you're looking at somewhere 50 to maybe up to 60 guys that he'll have to replace on the roster next year. Oh man, that's like, I mean, that's a rebuild. That's just a total rebuild from one year to the next. And this is a veteran team that is 5-5 with two games coming up, SMU this weekend, Virginia Tech next weekend, that they'll be heavy underdogs in. So, I mean, loading up on old guys and not winning and then having to start from scratch next year, not the way to go. But anyway, okay. Um, Look at the contributors. Let's get a sense of the guys who've come off the portal who've contributed. Cam Butler, I put him top of the list. He was supposed to be a one and done guy back in 2022. But then that year ended. We'll talk about the November 13th, 2022 shootings coming up in this podcast. With everybody got an extra year of eligibility from that, and then his season last year, medical redshirt, played I think 3 games, and then suffered it's a foot injury, but I'd have to go back and look. Anyway, got a seventh year. Um, he's the Blutarski of this team, and boy, he's put up some really good numbers. 37 QB pressures, just one sack, right? So just when you think, oh, just one sack, 37 QB pressures ranks in the top 20 nationally. Uh, that's that he's getting pressure on quarterbacks and consistently doing so. So Butler, from 2 years ago, from Miami of Ohio, and you'll notice a trend here with a lot of the schools. There's only a couple of Power Four schools. Campton Shine, a cornerback from Eastern Michigan, Pro Football Focus grade of 77.5. He is the embodiment of shutdown corner. They did a great job finding this kid. He's allowed just 12 catches on 34 pass targets. That's absurd. A 66.7 NFL passer rating against 5 pass breakups for Shine. Corey Thomas, I mentioned him earlier, the safety. Pro Football Focus grade of 76.5. Actually, I didn't mention him. It was Corey. It was another Corey that I mentioned. 538 snaps this year, 42 tackles, 24 on run plays, 90.8 NFL passer rating against. That's a little high, but I mean, I like, he's versatile. Contributor in the run game. Kobe Pace, tailback from Clemson. So there's a Power 5 guy, Power 4 guy. PFF grade of 72.5, 479 yards on the ground. 20 catches on 26 targets for 184 yards out of the backfield. So those are good numbers. Tyler Neville has been a revelation, the kid from Harvard. PFF grade of 67.5, 31 catches, 46 targets, 352 yards, 2 touchdowns. Solid run blocking grade, 67.0. Brian Stevens, he's later on my list here, but he should be closer to the top. The center from Dayton from last year, 2 year start on the offensive line, 869 snaps last year, 643 this year. He's been the MVP of the offensive line for 2 years. He came from Dayton, so I mean that's a find right there. These and all these kids are finds. I mean, we're talking about Miami of Ohio, Eastern Michigan, Akron, Harvard, Dayton. Now Kendra Smith, the cornerback from Penn, 420 snaps this year, a little bit lower grade, 57.3. Uh, Good in pass coverage, 89.0 NFL passer rating against. Jam Jackson, another kid from a small school, Robert Morris, great name, Jam. He's a defensive, he's a cornerback, and his name is his name or nickname is Jam. 627 snaps, a lot of snaps, 56.6 PFF grade, and he's kind of a feast or famine guy. The famine is the 105.7 NFL passer rating against, but also 5 pass breakups this year, 4 touchdowns allowed, contributing to the NFL passer rating against being a little higher. By the way, if you're hearing noise, there's work being done here at the home office, so forget that part. Um, Now that's the contributors. The honorable mentions. I mentioned Trell Harris earlier in the podcast. If you're listening to listening to or watching one of the videos, talked about Trell Harris on the injury report. He's still out this week. He only played 3 games this year. Would have loved to have seen what he could have done with this team this year. 13 catches in those 3 games, 201 yards. Just good numbers per catch, yards per catch, and then he's the deep threat on this team. Love to have had him back this weekend. Hopefully, get him back next weekend. He's from Kent State. Other honorable mention will be Tony Muskett. Again, talked earlier in the podcast, and if you're watching on video, one of the shorter videos, Muskett might be the starter quarterback this weekend. I don't think so, but he should be. I think he should be. I'll say that. I didn't say that earlier. I think he should be the quarterback this weekend. Um, uh, you know, Good numbers, just injured a lot last year. That injury put him behind the 8 ball. He didn't get to play in spring. Um, and Calandri's been regressing, so we'll see. Maybe Muska gets the call. And that's why I'm putting him as an honorable mention. Getting snaps, guys. These are the guys who are getting snaps but aren't doing much with them. Chris Tyree has been a disappointment. Man, there was, a hope. I mean, I'm going to use the words Malik Washington. Nobody was going to do what Malik Washington did last year, 110 catches. That's just ridiculous. But I mean, the idea of a speedy guy like Tyree playing the slot like Malik Washington did last year, pairing him up with Malachi Fields on the end and Trell Harris, we didn't even know what we had when we got him in from Kent State. But man, if all those three, if Harris was healthy and Tyree he's not been healthy either. He's had a groin injury, he's had some nagging things, but just 23 catches on 35 targets and just 127 yards. The only thing they've really done with him is use him on wide receiver screens. He's done nothing downfield. It's just amazing. I mean, there's a guy from Notre Dame that you just thought was going to be, and again, not 110 catches, but he was going to be a contributor, and he's not been. Another disappointment from a power four from North Carolina, former four-star recruit Andre Green Jr. He's played in 10 games. He's got 9 catches on 19 targets. Just major disappointment. And I remember last week he got called for a hold on a wide receiver screen that brought a play back, and then he missed a block on another one. And it's just not good. Another Power Five guy getting snaps, Ugana Nana, the offensive lineman. He keeps getting thrown out there. 377 snaps this year. His pass block grade is 37.2 from PFF. I mean, those are three guys from power conferences that have just done nothing. The injured list, uh, Dorian Jones from Cincinnati. He's on the injured list, but he could move his way up to contributors. In the last 3 games, he's been on field for 97 snaps, and he's the kind of guy that could be a difference maker if he's more available. And he might be with James Jackson out at middle linebacker. Maybe Jones gets some more run there. Jimmy Christ, another guy from a power four, Penn State offensive lineman. Only been on the field for 4 snaps this year, 77 snaps total, or 4 games, 77 snaps. Um, just hasn't been effective. Sage Ennis re-injured a knee that had cut his season short at Clemson last year. Just 72 snaps in 4 games. And Ethan Sipe didn't even, excuse me, I was going to say didn't get on the field. Actually got on the field for 20 snaps in the opener with Richmond, broke his foot, was out for the season. So, and I didn't mention even in the column that I wrote on this, Drake Metcalf from Central Florida, injured. I believe he was injured in the spring. I know he's been out for quite a while, and he's not going to play this year. So the analysis there, Elliott and company have been able to plug some holes. But aside from last year's revelation with Malik Washington, the portal hasn't elevated the overall level of talent in the program. And if the past 2 years trends continue, you're not going to just have to replace again the 43 guys who were out of eligibility this year, but then another 12 to 15 guys. The difficulty, I wrote a column about this last week. Elliott was interviewed after the win over Pitt, live on the set of the ACC Huddle. And Mark Richt, the former head coach at Georgia, former head coach at Miami, who interviewed for the UVA job back after Mike London was let go before Bronco Mendenhall was hired. Richt indicated, hey, yeah, I was interviewed for the UVA job, and I know how hard it is to recruit there. Asked Elliott just how hard it is to recruit there, and what Elliott said was, it is difficult to get guys into UVA. You can't really go after sophomores or juniors, at least to any degree, because there are exceptions to the rule, but it's just hard for a sophomore to transfer in and get 60 credits in his last 2 years at UVA. There's a lot of makeups that have to be done. Credits that won't be accepted from other schools, that kind of thing. So it's really hard to stay on course to graduation if you're a sophomore. You can find freshmen. You can find a great student somewhere else who's got undergraduate eligibility left. You're pretty much reduced, Elliott said, to going after guys who are already grad students. I mean, that's Chris Tyree, for example, as a guy of that nature. So, you're limited what you can get from the portal. And then the other side of this is where you got to indict the Tony Elliott regime. The prep recruiting has just been god awful. 247 Sports has Virginia's 2024 class, the bulk of which will be announced here, I guess, in a few weeks. December, the December signing date is the big one now, not the February one. The 2024 class is 15th in the ACC out of 17. Notre Dame doesn't count as far as football goes. 88th nationally. Some of the schools ahead of Virginia nationally: Toledo, North Texas, Western Michigan, Charlotte, Arkansas State, South Alabama. And, Virginia is an ACC school. They just opened that $80 million football ops center. All that was supposed to solve so many problems, and it's not getting done. So I don't know. There's not a lot to think. Looking forward to the future for as far as that goes. All right, let's shift gears again, staying within football. Uh, a few weeks ago, let's see if I can get a date on this. Back in October, let's just say a couple weeks ago. UVA football, UVA athletics announced a two-game series with West Virginia University, 2026 and 2032, so not back-to-back games. And they're both being played in Charlotte. And I got a lot of questions from readers about that series. Why are they playing these games in Charlotte? Why not play them on home campuses? Wouldn't it be great to have West Virginia coming to Charlottesville? Wouldn't it be great to go to what, Morgantown? Um, and I mean, when I was just doing my in-head analysis, all right, well, if they're playing these games in Charlotte, it's because they're getting paid, you know. And somebody did the math, and they're going to get paid more than they would make if they were playing a home game, especially playing your home game and then what you get paid for the road game. And then I, did what I do, which is file a Freedom of Information Act request, and then that's what confirmed the contract confirmed. But I want to go through that here. And again, there's a column on the website that you can read and kind of see this. So the game sponsor is technically known as Charlotte Sports Events LLC. They do business as Charlotte Sports Foundation, nonprofit foundation. Charlotte Sports Foundation puts on the Duke's Mayo Bowl. They put on, early season basketball games, men's and women's. I think this year I think it's South Carolina and NC State has a game in the Spectrum Center. I mean, that should be fun. Um, UVA basketball the men's team played in one of these early season games in Charlotte last year in the Spectrum Center. If you remember, it was a game with Florida where Corey Alexander interjected himself from the TV table. Uh, so you get paid to play these games. And when I looked at the contract, the floor, the guarantee is $2 million per school per game. That's the floor because it rises. There's a 45% of revenues schematic factored in there. And I'll go into how much the potential is there in a second. But just even looking at the floor, the 2 million, this is if, 30,000 people show up for some reason instead of 60 or 60, 60 plus thousand. Um, the floor being two. The average ticket gate for UVA football, now the most recent numbers I have are for 2022, still waiting for the 2023 numbers to come out so we can factor these back in. But I looked at the 2021 and 2022 seasons. UVA averaged from ticket sales alone $1.34 million per game. Now, that doesn't include concessions and merchandise. And UVA didn't actually report those numbers that I could find anywhere. But I can average based on West Virginia because West Virginia does report this. Now West Virginia averaged $2.14 million in ticket sales for its home games in 2021 and 2022, and another 417,000 in concessions and merchandise. So, there's more people at their games. Even if we give the 417 to UVA, it's going to probably be closer to 300 per game. You're looking 1.6, $1.7 million per game for UVA, a value of a UVA home game. And you're looking at 2.55 million as the value of a West Virginia home game. So West Virginia is the one you would be asking the question, why are they playing these games? They make more than $2 million from home games. Um, but the first answer there is the guarantee is just the floor. When I looked further into the contract, the term sheet spells out that if the games are sellouts, the schools bring home closer to $3.3 million, much more than what a value, even of much more than a West Virginia home game even is. And that's also 3.3 million per game for both games. Virginia doesn't have great ticket sales, as we've noted, lots on these podcasts and videos, and certainly on the website. So that would have to factor in if you're West Virginia. Hey, we can get $6.6 million for these two games, and we wouldn't get anything close to that playing at home and then having to play at Virginia and getting a share of their paltry dollars. Um, so yeah, the poor attendance at the UVA home games is a drag, but this isn't Virginia going somewhere else and getting paid. This is Virginia going to a neutral site, and we might actually have more fans in a stadium in Charlotte than we would in Charlottesville anyway. I hate to say it that way, but we probably would. Um, Now, what does the Charlotte Sports Foundation get out of this? I mean, this is something that goes on. I mean, you're seeing a lot of cities do this for all kinds of sports events. I mean, I cover and follow the pro wrestling business closely. TKO, the new owner of the WWE, is putting out uh, packages to cities, taking bids from cities to be able to host WrestleMania weekend or SummerSlam weekend. and they're getting lots of money for these things. So because what the cities get, is they get the people coming in, running hotel rooms, they get people eating in restaurants. I mean, things like that. Charlotte projected its economic impact, the impact of the Charlotte Sports Foundation, at just under $80 million last year. 70,500 hotel rooms booked. I'd say it, that sounds weird to say. 70,500 hotel rooms booked. 216,000 people visiting. So, I mean, a hotel room for every three people. The trick here is getting schools like UVA and WVU, which are close enough for the bulk of the fan base to drive, or maybe fly. I might fly down there. Um, it's a 5 hour drive or a 45-minute flight. Um, but not close enough. Like you wouldn't want necessarily. I mean, I think one of the games coming up, they do have a Carolina team booked in there, but you don't want UNC in any of these games because their fans are just going to drive to the game and drive back home. They're not going to stay. They're probably not even going to eat a meal out. They'll eat something in the football stadium, but that's about it. But you get UVA and WVU. We're close enough to get down there relatively easily, but we got to stay overnight. And so $79.7 million dollars economic impact from two football games and a couple of preseason basketball games. They have a running event or two in there as well. Um, it's no surprise that I looked at the future schedule. In addition to the 2026 and 2032 games, UVA and West Virginia. West Virginia has another one of these games with Tennessee in 2028. So uh, I was guessing right with the with what the Charlotte Sports Foundation people are going to do. We should play more of these games. Get a good marquee opponent. Early season game. Chance to start your season off with a bang. Um, just your daily reminder that sports is more of a business than it is sports. Um, now, this is the hard part of the sports news business. Got to tell you, there was other UVA football news. This will wrap up the UVA football portion of the podcast. Um, Regarding those November 13th, 2022 shootings. The assailant, Christopher Darnell Jones, a former UVA student, pleaded guilty this week. In fact, I'm recording this on Thursday. He pleaded guilty in Albemarle County Circuit Court on Wednesday to 3 counts of murder, 2 counts of malicious wounding, 5 counts of use of a firearm. Faces 5 life terms plus 23 years. And it's important to note, this is not a plea deal. He didn't get uh, any leniency necessarily with a sentencing recommendation from prosecutors. Just basically pleaded guilty just to avoid the trial. Um, he was scheduled to go to trial in January. Now the next court date is February for sentencing. A 4-day sentencing hearing is scheduled to begin February 4th. Um, just to go over the details. Yeah, I hate this part of this job. There was a field trip, drama classes. Um, that Devin Chandler, Lavelle Davis Jr., Mike Collins, Deshaun Perry, four UVA football team members were part of. There were 20 to 25 students on this field trip. They went to Washington, D.C. to see a civil rights play. They had dinner out at a cultural and ethnic restaurant. Apparently, everyone had a great time. And then when the bus got back late, it was like around 11 o'clock on the Sunday night. It was the day after a football game. UVA lost to Pitt the day before. Um, uh, uh, this Chris Jones fellow opened fire. He had a gun with him the whole time, obviously, opened fire. Uh, Chandler and Deshaun Perry were killed instantly from what the details that I remember from the reporting we did a couple years ago on this. Chandler had fallen asleep on the bus. He was killed in his sleep. Um, Perry died on the bus. Davis was transported to UVA Hospital, died there. Mike Collins was something of a hero in this story. He had he was sitting to the front of the bus and he'd ushered a group of students off the bus towards safety and then went back to see if he could find some more people to lead off and confronted, the gunman. And the gunman shot him. Collins was very seriously wounded. and actually recovered and played football last year. Now he's an assistant. He's a grad assistant coach on the with the program. A fifth student was also injured, and she should not be minimized here. Marley Morgan, who I understand is a fourth year in the comm school, she recovered as well. Um, and um, Jones was apprehended the next day. He had gone back. He was from Henrico County, and I guess he'd gone back towards home. It emerged in the immediate aftermath of the shooting that Jones had been the subject of an investigation by the university, that he had been in possession of a gun. The investigation was later dropped because Jones wouldn't cooperate with authorities, dropping the ball there. And it was discovered in the course of the investigation by UVA officials that he had been convicted, Jones had been convicted in 2021 on a concealed weapons charge, and that he had not reported that to the university as would be required. Uh, there was a lot to that story too. That I mean, I've got links on the website if you want to go back and dive into all the details there. It's not a good story. It doesn't look it's not going to look good on UVA. Now the school had prepared to refer the failure of Jones to report that concealed weapons conviction to the Judiciary Committee. The student-led Judiciary Committee actually didn't do this, so another drop ball. So they dropped the ball on whether to investigate him themselves. They dropped the ball on getting the Judiciary Committee to do their own investigation. There was an external review of all this that had been requested by the university's Board of Visitors. That review was completed by the Attorney General's office. Jason Mayari is the Attorney General. Uh, Presented the report to the UVA administration and Board of Visitors last October. Originally, the UVA folks had said they were going to release the report, and they balked on that. And so we're what over a year now from that point, and it's still not going to be revealed until after. Now the University of Virginia is saying in a statement that they're not going to release this report until after the sentencing now. So, and the excuse, because it's not a reason, it's an excuse. The excuse given is that the report could impact the trial somehow, and now the criminal proceedings in the form of a sentencing. The real reason is it's not going to look good on UVA. That's the real reason there. So, any case, so that's the bad news there. Don't like having to go into that too much, but it's important. It's part of this part of the DNA now, unfortunately, of UVA athletics and the University of Virginia community. Take a breath, and now let's switch gears and talk some basketball, if we can. I'm recording this on Thursday. It's 12:30-ish, 9:30 tonight. Virginia plays Tennessee in the Bahamas. I wish I was there, because it's 43 degrees here in Virginia where I am, and it's gonna be in the 80s down there. Number 11 Tennessee. Virginia is the only. That's a It's a four-team tournament. Virginia is the only unranked team in this. The other side of the bracket has St. John's and Baylor. Um, Virginia coming off a win over Villanova in Baltimore. I did get up to Baltimore for that one last week, and Virginia looked pretty good, 70-60 win over the Wildcats. Tennessee is 4-0 on the season, and most significant win at Louisville, 77-55. The Vols were in control of that one from the get-go. Um, Now, the news with this UVA team is Ron Sanchez has been going with a three forward lineup, as opposed, to his mentor Tony Bennett for 15 years at Virginia, going with a three guard lineup. It'll be interesting to see. I think he might still start as three forwards, but he's gonna play a lot of three guard in this one because Rick Barnes at Tennessee goes three guards, and often he actually goes a lot of four guard. He'll start with three guards. His two starters in the post are 6'11" junior Felix Okpara and former Wahoo Igor Milicic. You might remember that name. Went to Charlotte, played for Ron Sanchez there, and then we actually were thinking about him in the transfer portal this spring. Didn't get him, and he's down there at Tennessee scoring 14 points a game. They have two bigs off the bench. Cade Phillips, a 6'9" sophomore, 6'11" sophomore, JP Estrella, excuse me. Um, but they play, yeah, they combined in a Louisville game 70 minutes, those four, which suggests that there's at least 10 minutes of four guard, 73 minutes in the win over Gardner Webb. So, I mean, they'll go four guard for a long stretch, decent stretch. Their point guard's a guy named Zakai Ziegler, 5'9" senior. The number that stands out to me, he had 19 points and seven assists in the Louisville game. He had 11 turnovers, 11 turnovers in that game. That's the matchup for the Kansas State transfer, Day Ames. get in his face, basically. Um, uh, Other guys, Chaz Lanier for Tennessee, he averaged 19.7 points per game at North Florida last year. He's averaging 13.8 as a grad transfer. The other starter is a 6'5" senior, Jemai Mashak, more of a defensive guy. Off the bench, a 6'4" senior, Jordan Gainey, averages 11 points a game, and he gets 25 minutes a game off the bench, and that's he gets the four guard minutes and then some extras. Um, if it was me running the show on the Virginia side, I'd start Jacob Kofi, but I've been saying that. We'll see. Eventually Kofi's going to start for this team. The 6'9" freshman is just too good. He's the second leading scorer on the team as a bench guy, 13 points and 7.7 rebounds a game, 45% from three. Um, he can play like a big guard, so I expect he'll get a lot of minutes in this game as a big guard, especially when Virginia has to go four guard to counter Tennessee. I'd like to see him going head to head with Milicic. Those two guys should be a fun matchup. The scouts want to see that. I can guarantee you that. The scouts down there in the Bahamas are going to want to see that. I don't know that Sanchez, though, is going to go with Kofi. I still think he's going to start his three forward lineup. That's Elijah Saunders, the San Diego State transfer, averaging 10.3 points a game, shooting 40% from three. Significant. I like his game around around the rim too. And then Blake Buchanan, he's 5.7 points, five rebounds a game. Um, the Duke transfer, TJ Power, the five-star recruit that came up to Virginia as a sophomore this year, not doing much so far. 3.7 points, 3.3 rebounds, 18 minutes a game. If he doesn't step it up, he's the guy who's going to lose his starting job. And he might lose it tonight. We'll see. I have to just guess he's practicing better than he plays because he's not playing so well in games yet. Um, and I see Sanchez starting. Like I said, Power, Saunders, Buchanan. Um, I think Kofi and Andrew Rhodey come off the bench. Rhodey is better off the bench. At least he was in the Nova game. 13 points. He had three threes in the first half, couple nice floaters, and the second half looked a little bit like Ty Jerome, who had 29 points last night for Cleveland Cavaliers. Yeah, hitting the threes. Slow white guy, old man game, YMCA game, but did it well. Um, and I think Kofi and Rhodey will end up getting 25 to 30 minutes off the bench. So. Um, and it wouldn't surprise me to see both teams going double digits with the four guard lineup. Maybe into the double digits with the four guard lineup. That would also be fun to watch. Let's just say it that way. Um, and so looking forward to that coming up tonight. That's a 9:30 tip. We'll be doing some live stuff during the game on the website. I'll write a recap after, but they play again tomorrow night. Win or lose, they're playing either St. John's or Baylor. So I'll recap tonight's game. Uh, and then wake up in the morning and do some observations and then get you ready for whoever we're playing tomorrow. And that's either 7 or 9:30 tomorrow, depending on win or lose. Uh, and again, it's going to be a ranked team, so looking forward to seeing how that all works out for Virginia basketball. I think these are an important couple of games to get a gauge for where this team is. I like this team, especially with Data Ames starting at point guard and Rhodey coming off the bench. There's a lot of talent here. It's just they're all new to each other. There's a lot of new faces, got to get used to each other, etc. So we'll see how it goes. And then, of course, for football, man, it's gonna be got a couple of late nights and then an early morning, really, because got a 9:30 game tonight. I'll be writing until after midnight. Could be a 9:30 game tomorrow night, writing after midnight, and then we have a noon game on Saturday, the football game. I'll be up early trying to get over to Charlottesville. Uh, that's gonna be some fun, but a lot of stuff coming up here the next few days. So, hey, worst thing, if that's what I'm complaining about is having too much UVA sports, life's pretty good, right? If you have any questions for me, email me at chris@augustafreepress.com. I encourage you to go to our website and read more about these topics I talked about here on the podcast here on these videos here, and learn more about UVA sports. And I love hearing from you as well. I want to thank you for joining us here, and everyone have a great day.